Good afternoon. This is your host, Michael J. Long, host of Michaels Libertarian Pizza Party at 1:58 p.m. And thank you for joining me. I truly and sincerely appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider clicking the subscription link. Click the notification bell and then select all, and then that way you will be notified of any future video contents and uploads that I do. And and if you also want, if you don't want to do that, but instead you want to join my membership, you can do that as well. If you want to become a channel member, I believe it's $4.99 or $3.99 or whatever the price is. I think it's $4.99. So it might be $5. I'll have to double check on that for the special Michael, and then I think it's $9.99, so it's $10 for the premium Michael. But again, I gotta check up on that, and so yeah, either do that or subscribe, whatever you want to do to support the channel. That'd be great too. So again, it's 1:59, and so this is going to be a very quick, well, actually, I think it's going to be a very detailed episode. No, I think it'll be quick. I don't know. Yeah, I think it'll be quick. Because there isn't really much to talk about except for the same old, well, you know. So here's my address to my wonderful. First of all, I want to thank you guys for those of you who've subscribed. I greatly appreciate it. I hope that you'll stay with me on this wonderful journey because we're going to have one hell of a pizza party. Let me tell you. And first of all, I don't like where the direction of where this country's headed. And I can guarantee you, if Trump gets reelected, he's going to blame everything on Biden. And just like Biden did with Trump, and just like Trump did with Obama, and so forth. Every president, and if you think about it, every single presidential nominee that's ever won the nomination or got elected as president of the United States or got elected as members of Congress or what have you, especially with the presidency. Because the presidency, it's always been someone with a lot of money, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, right? And then they tell you, and then meanwhile we have all these restrictive laws at the state level, at the federal level, etc., that restrict third-party access to the ballot and third-party access to limits to campaign contributions and whatnot. And we're supposed to, apparently reform the Democratic and Republican parties, which isn't going to happen either, because they'll tell us, oh, voting third party and that third party winning, all that's never going to happen, But at the same time, their alternative is reforming the two major parties. So if that's their argument, that's not going to happen either. We saw this back in 2012, and I was a very vocal Ron Paul supporter and a supporter of the Gary Johnson campaign when Ron Paul's supposed nomination was rigged. So I stayed with him pretty much to the bitter end, and I switched over to the Gary Johnson campaign. And, but I've been a libertarian even a year before that. So, but again, first of all, I think we should have campaign finance reform so that we're at a even playing field with the amount of money that we can give to third-party candidates, including our beloved Libertarian Party, because believe it or not, we're restricted with how much money we can give third parties, both individuals and corporations, while the Democrats and Republicans and get unlimited amount of donations from individuals and corporations, etc. But any corporation or individual who wishes to put more than whatever the limit is, a third party has to send a portion of that back. I can't accept it. It's a bunch of garbage, and that's one of the main reasons why we need campaign finance reform. We also need comprehensive immigration reform to address immigration and so that we can get to a point where we can allow for more people being allowed to enter the country legally. And I think the way we do that is we should make the immigration system more affordable for people to pay to come in, and for people and less time consuming, more cost effective and less time consuming. So that we can get more people to come here legally, so that they don't have to come here illegally, right? And as well as people from other countries. And so that's a big reason why we need campaign finance, comprehensive immigration reform, if you will. We also need tax reform at the federal level, right? So, for example, the fair tax would be a good alternative to the income tax that we have. And then on top of that, we need to abolish the Federal Reserves and the IRS, and that entity can be replaced by Congress. Congress can be the entity that does what the IRS is currently doing, which is supposed to be done by Congress in accordance to the U.S. Constitution anyways. They're supposed to not only pass the laws, but also collect and levy taxes, and they haven't been doing that. They've been deferring to the IRS since the Federal Reserve Act of 1918. So, and I feel the Congress should be the agency that manages taxes if we're going to, with all that. And I ultimately feel that we should have less taxes and less government and maximum freedom. So that includes abolishing all the other federal government agencies that we don't need. It includes privatizing the VA and the National Weather Service, and retaining Social Security, including Medicaid and Medicare Social Security, but allowing individuals to privately donate to Social Security and having that run off of private contributions as opposed to the tax dollars, the taxpayers. So the only thing the taxpayers would be paying for would be the courts, the Congress, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch run by the Supreme Court, and whatever state taxes their state has for their governments. And I would encourage state governments to do the same for their state and municipalities in terms of reducing the size and scope and power of the government. And I think that's the way to do it. Also, we need to bring the troops home and bring them home for good, and reduce the amount of members that are in the military, because we should not have a standing army. We should have it capped at whatever minimum army we can have once they're all brought home. And what else? Right? So these are all this is basically Michael J. Long on the issues 101, basically. Right? It's me expressing what could be done at the federal level that isn't being done. These are all things we could do at the federal level that we're not doing because we have so many Democrats and Republicans who have rigged the system. Now, as you know, it's all pay to play, right? Because you're not going to get a whole lot of media attention in the press when you're running for president on behalf of the Libertarian Party unless you're famous or well known, and that you also have the money, as well as the backing of the Libertarian Party. But it's generally how you get noticed in the media. You have to and outside of that, you have to have a lot of money to buy polls and ads, to get on the polls, to get on the ads, to meet the requirements. And while the two major parties have a minimum standard for the getting on the ballot, they make that standard much higher for third parties. So the system is rigged right from the very get-go, and it's been rigged for years by the Democrats and the Republicans. And, and it's a catch-22 because we're not going to get anywhere near passing an agenda that I've mentioned like that or anything like of that sort unless of course we get people elected to Congress and get a president so we can have Supreme Court justices that favor the U.S. Constitution as opposed to their political party because they were appointed by Trump or Biden, who is the current president, or Obama, who was one of the past presidents that we've had who served 2 terms, and so forth. And being that Joe Biden is the current president, I should probably put more of an emphasis on criticizing him on issues that he hasn't delivered on. First of all, instead, he's increased the tax rate in this country, and I'll have to do more research on it and on him, what I can criticize him on, but I think that's one of them. There's a few things he's done that I like, which is pulling out of Afghanistan for one, and bringing all the troops that were in Afghanistan home. And I wish he could do that for everybody that's in Iraq and in the Middle East and whatnot, right? And all over the world, just bring them home, right? So again, that's and he got rid of the pipeline project that was heavily backed by the government and shoved down everyone's throats by the government, right? If this were just purely the free market doing it, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. But if it's going to have government involvement in the deal, right, then I am going to have a problem with it. So, but at least this gives us a starting point to make that determination if we're going to continue with a pipeline like that, right? What we can do to get the government out of the way of such projects. And that's another thing, getting rid of asset forfeiture and not to mention eminent domain. I think we should abolish eminent domain and abolish asset forfeiture and the NDAA and the Patriot Act and the Affordable Health Care Act and the Dodd-Frank Act and all these other hurtful laws and high regulations and taxes that we should reduce the taxes that this country has to pay and eliminate all the regulations. I mean, eliminate the regulations, the bulk of the regulations, the high taxes, and gut the government. Get rid of abolish all the federal government agencies and law enforcement agencies that we don't need, and privatize the USPS and the National Weather Service, and the VA, of course, should be privatized, and just bring the troops home. And, let's allow people to come in if they want a better life for themselves and their loved ones and their family members and whatnot, and let them prosper and be prosperous. I think we should legalize marijuana throughout the country, and there are attempts at doing that in Congress, but I'd like to see how far that goes. So, Congress, of course, I'd like to at some point see the legalization through of prostitution or what we or sex work, whatever you want to refer to it as, and all drugs and whatnot, because really, unless it's a violent crime and force has been initiated upon another person, there should be no other reason why we should arrest or detain anyone. People should be allowed to decide for themselves what they choose to put in their own bodies, how they choose to spend their money and raise their children, and so on and so forth, as long as they don't initiate force, or as long as they don't initiate danger, force, or fraud, as long as they don't initiate force or harm to others, and as long as they're not committing fraud, then there's no reason on the face of the earth why we should be arresting them and throwing them in jail and prison for every little non-violent offense. I think, in my personal opinion, that that's a bunch of garbage. And we really should be gutting the government as much as we can so that we have a small, limited federal government, and we should encourage states across the country to do the same thing. And so, again, there's all these aspects to consider, along with tax reform and civil liberties. And I think the more civil liberties that we have, the better off we're going to be. And on top of that, I think we should look into, getting the government out of financial aid. Because prior to the Affordable Health Care Act, the financial aid was managed by the colleges, all the colleges and higher educational institutions. So, for example, right, if you had, it would be paid for by people who paid out of pocket to go to their classes, to do classes and whatnot, and people that didn't have the money, they'd have a pool of money to give for financial aid for the community. This was especially effective with community college and with loans given out to individuals who needed it for universities and whatnot. And the government took it over with the Affordable Health Care Act, along with, and and with that, and it hasn't done anything to get rid of financial aid, or student loan debt, if you will, because we still have student loan debt, and didn't do a damn thing about addressing that. Instead it was just, what can we do to give government more power? So I think the alternative to that should be, what should we do to give the government less power? Not more power, but less, right? And I think another good, and if you want colleges to be accountable and shit, then let's roll back those type of provisions, and let's give them back, the financial aid directors, give them back the power they once had, and instead give students who are in student loan debt the right to file for bankruptcy, which they currently cannot do, right? But allow them to do that, and and again, it's the only thing that would fix that. On top of letting people who go to college be accountable, be self-reliant on what, because here's the deal: you go to college, you rack up the debt, that's on you. Now you got to pay it off, right? That's not on everybody else to do. Nobody else owes you a freaking living. Nobody else should have to pay. I mean, you can if you want. You can owe them a living if you want, but nobody should be forced into helping you with your financial aid or your student loan debt, if you will, right? And so, again, I mean, because then you have the initiation of force being imposed upon the taxpayers by the government. And the initiation of force should not be allowed by government or by individuals. In fact, I would occur that the primary basis for government is to protect individuals from other individuals that may wish to impose uh, danger, or initiate, if you will, danger, force, or fraud to others. That's why we have courts to settle disputes. That's why we have criminal courts, and then criminal, and the criminality is, as such, should be against people who commit murder, violent offenses such as murder, rape, armed robbery, unarmed robbery, arson, stalking, and pedophilia, and very egregious offenses, right? Um, where there's danger, force, or fraud being committed upon an individual, and individuals in general, right? And if you're a consenting adult, you should be allowed to live your life how you want. If you're a minor and you're under the care of your mother or father, they have the right to decide how they're going to raise you and whatnot. I mean, either way, it's not something that government should be involved in, you know. So I think the less government that unless, there's initiation of force, right? So I think the less government that we have, the better off we're going to be. And so I know it's been almost a half hour, so I'll wrap it up by saying this. There are a lot of people in the multiverse, in this universe and in the multiverse. Well, I don't know about the multiverse, but it's a lot of people in this world, especially, you know, and nobody knows any, the goals of what one might have other than that individual themselves and the life that they want to live. So for government to then turn around and impede on that, I think you are the power, and you should be the one to decide for yourself what's best for you, not the government. The only thing the government should do is provide local, state, and county law enforcement or peace officers. So that in itself should be done by the local, state, and county governments throughout the country. They should be providing peace officers or law enforcement, if you will, and the federal government should stay out of the law. I mean, obviously the federal government should have courts and whatnot, but the federal government should not have its own law enforcement agencies, because that in itself would be unconstitutional and is unconstitutional. So that's another aspect to look into as well. But anyways, you know what's best. But anyways, government's only role in all this should be to protect your rights, your civil liberties, and protect you from and to empower you to protect yourself, and basically to protect you against people who want to impose danger, force, fraud to others. Which you should also be. I have now. Now here's the deal. I have no problem with force as long as it's self-defense and not being initiated. But if it's being initiated, yeah, that's a problem, right? But outside of that, I think that the government should protect your rights and not trample all over it. Other than that, I think the government should stay out of much of what we do and whatnot. But that's not the world we live in. And so, but we should and it's tragic because if we started electing libertarians, maybe, and this is what I think, right? I think if we start electing libertarians, I think we'll be in a step in the right direction than where we're at now. And we've already gotten libertarians elected at the local, state, and county level. So I'm hoping at some point throughout the country, at least in some states, we got them elected at the state level, but mostly local and county levels throughout the country. So, anyways, I'm Michael J. Long, and at 2:22 p.m. And also, you can listen to me on 89.6 FM if you're in the Johnstown, Gloversville area. Also, I have a podcast show, which is also Michaels Libertarian Pizza Party. So you can look that up anytime I do my podcasting. It's anchor.fm/Michaels Libertarian. No, it's anchor.fm/Michael J. Long. And of course, the URL is listed right here at https www.youtube.com/c/Michaels Libertarian Pizza Party. And that's about it. And so I'm Michael J. Long, and thank you for joining me. I truly and sincerely appreciate it.